Hey, it's Drybear, and we just got some pretty big news. In World of Warcraft, the Dragonflight Evoker is getting a third specialization, which was data mined and potentially theorized by many, but it hadn't been confirmed until today. So we're going to go over the third specialization for Evoker. But first, you should join me on my live stream. If you don't come hang out, then you're going to wake up slightly before your alarm on your day off. All right, let's jump into it. Bolster your allies with the Augmentation Evoker Specialization. So there were some theories about whether or not Evoker was going to get a third specialization, and we were wondering if it was going to be true. Some people thought there were whispers about it, and there was even an idea that maybe they were going to use the Black Dragonflight to create a tank specialization for the Evoker, making it the fourth healer that has all three roles in their build, which is pretty cool. But we do find out today that it is a damage spec. Now, this is an interesting idea. We'll go through everything here, but the idea that they want for this is something that doesn't really exist in World of Warcraft now, and that is the support DPS or support damage role. You have this existing in other MMOs, in specifically Lost Ark. A lot of the support characters in that spend their time, they make up for their lack of damage by causing massive damage spikes in other players. Same thing for things like the Astrologian in Final Fantasy XIV, so on and so forth. And so by having maybe lesser DPS, they focus on being able to smartly buff and enhance their teammates to cause a greater overall gain in DPS while being in the DPS role. And it's something that we didn't really have in World of Warcraft. Now, I do have some concerns about this existing, namely things like power infusion already cause a pretty big rift in the balancing of classes and who gets PI and how PI gets applied. So if they have a full specialization that focuses on this in general, who knows what that's going to do. Hopefully they can find a way to put it all together. And if they do, it's kind of a fun non-healing support way to play the game, and you're still doing damage. So how that exists in World of Warcraft, I have tons of questions. I'm sure you do too, but let's jump into the build itself. So Emberthal and Abyssian are working together to release the Black Dragonflight Essence. We know this from the story, and they got a brand new specialization called Augmentation. So if we have a lot of red and blue aspects being utilized for devastation, we have the green aspect for preservation. What's left is going to be the Black Dragonflight and the Bronze Dragonflight for augmentation, and then we've got all of our Dragonflights covered by their three specializations. And we know that Bronze is all about speeding up time, slowing down time, causing temporal issues, and then Black Dragonflight has a lot of power, damage, output, scaling, earthy tones, flamey tones, shadowy tones, right? So they got all that going on there. So the Augmentation DPS role, they use the essence of Black and Bronze Dragonflight to amplify the abilities of nearby allies. The playstyle for this new spec involves empowering your allies with a variety of beneficial effects. Some can be cast directly on your allies, while others are tied to using your DPS effectively. Again, a lot of questions on how that might work. Deliver their damage in a wholly unique way. They act as force multipliers, increasing the overall output. They use the word significantly here. So yeah. Augmenting allies. Certain augmentation abilities, see examples below. This is an empower here. Buff either your whole party or specific members, and many of these have smart or proximity-based automatic targeting systems, enabling you to maintain focus on the battlefield and enemy selection. So this could create a brand new way to play the game. This could be very disruptive and pretty fun and unique for things like Mythic Plus lineups, being able to fit this build into your setup. And this might even open the opportunity for some specs that are weaker running with an Augmentation Evoker, being able to step into the spotlight, so on and so forth. Yet you want to be able to utilize your empowers effectively and your DPS. You'll still be able to target specific members if you desire. However, there is plenty of freedom to bolster your allies as you see fit. I'm wondering, based on this, if it's going to be kind of like the Dragonfire, where you aim and then it smart detects the best target ally in the cone while you're channeling, and then when you release it, it just kind of figures it out. There's plenty of things in the game that work this way already, so it's not too crazy or out of pocket. Augmentation makes use of familiar capabilities like spending essence, their passive resource, using your mobility to navigate the battlefield, and making use of empowered spells. The power of Black and Bronze, these sample abilities for augmentation should give you an idea of what each aspect of magic brings to the table. Each Black Dragonflight will bring magic focused on raw power increases and forceful outbursts of earthen might. I like earth. I always wanted a pure earthen build for shaman, but we're going to get it for some earth. And you can even see here with upheaval, definitely some earth effects and some tectonic tones going along with that. And then bronze magic is all about bending time, changing fate, and shifting timelines to tremendous effect. So the first skill that they give us a preview of is Ebon Might. It is a 1.5 second cast with a 30-second cooldown. It increases your 4 nearest allies' primary stat by a percentage of your own. So the better your gear is, the more buff you give to your teammates, which incentivizes you as an augmenter, increasing your own gear and your own capabilities because it increases them as well, and cause your eruption to deal more damage for 10 seconds. Some of your other spells extend the duration of these effects. So that you would cast this, and it looks like you just cast it, and it smart finds 4 nearby allies, increases their main stat. This affects healers, this affects tanks, this affects DPS. Everyone benefits from this buff, which is pretty cool. Eruption, which is mentioned here, it causes your eruption to deal more damage for 10 seconds. So you would start with Ebon Might with a 30-second cooldown. This is an essence spender. So you, when you go into augmentation, if you have eruption, this replaces disintegrate. So you're not going to be channeling this. Instead, it's a 2-second cast. Cause a violent eruption beneath an enemy's feet, dealing volcanic damage split between them and nearby enemies. Increases the duration of your active Ebon Might effects. So Ebon Might, you cast it, it buffs nearby allies and causes your eruption to do more damage. Then when you use eruption, it causes the duration of the buffs from your Ebon Might to be extended. So you buff and then you deal damage to extend the buff. That kind of synergy makes sense. Upheaval is the spell we're seeing up here. This is the one that has a smart cast, probably Empower, to be able to cause some kind of effect. 2.5 second Empower, so big channel. I'm sure they might have an option to extend this to multiple channels, like multiple Empower levels within their own talent tree. Gather earth and power beneath your enemy's feet and send them hurtling upwards, dealing volcanic damage to them and nearby enemies. Empowering expands the area effect, increases the duration of your Ebon Might effect. So as you channel this Empower effect, the area gets bigger and it does split damage. So I wonder if it's going to be the same amount of damage regardless. And then you might just want to focus on one target if you're single targeting, or maybe you want big AoE based on the Empower duration. And then how that works with your instant Empower ability would be interesting as well. Breath of Eons, 1.5 minute cooldown replaces Deep Breath. So you don't have Deep Breath with this specialization. Fly to the target location, exposing temporal wounds on enemies in your path for 10 seconds. That's just flavor text. Temporal wounds accumulate a portion of damage dealt by your allies, and then critically strike the enemy for that amount at the end of the duration. Increases the duration of your active Ebon Might. This one is potentially, it's almost like a mini Bloodlust effect in that your group will want to take good advantage of this. Because if this is true one-to-one damage dealt, meaning that a portion of that damage gets dealt, we'll see what percentage that is, but still it can be very effective. If you pop cooldowns, you save cooldowns on a rotation, you pop Bloodlust, or you use things on your best DPS, and then timing Breath of Eons to put temporal wounds either on the boss or in a big M+ pull them all together and get that mark, or even in PvP, this could be really fun to mark a target, burst them down with like an elemental shaman or something, and then it hits that damage later on based on how well you timed that. And notice that Upheaval, Eruption, and Breath of Eons all extend the duration of your Ebon Might. So you buff, and then the more you're using your other abilities to deal damage, you're increasing the duration of those buffs. You're keeping those buffs active by dealing damage, which kind of makes good on their concept here that they want it to be a support DPS, that you are providing support, and the better you play your role, the more damage you deal, the more damage everyone deals, that sort of thing. So on paper, this seems to make sense. A great display of talent. With access to a brand new spec, Augmentation can choose to further specialize in bronze or black magic, depending on how they do their spec here, as well as discover new ways to power up their allies. We don't get to see exactly what these are, but we can see by the icons, there's definitely some DPS options here, potentially some more bronze modifications here, or more buffing. Draconic Attunement's passive. Learn to attune yourself to the essence of black or bronze Dragonflight. Black grants you and your nearby allies increased maximum health. Bronze grants you and your nearby allies increased movement speed. There's probably going to be more value for one or the other on this, depending on what you're doing, but it is nice to be able to kind of pick and choose, and both of those are buffing your allies. And I wonder if this is dynamic as well, as, you know, can you go stand near your tanks during a tank buster to give them more extra HP, and then, you know, when there's a soak mechanic, can you buff them with HP that way? If you need to go rescue someone with movement speed, can you do that? You know, how does that actually calculate? Blistering Scales protects an ally with explosive dragon scales, increasing their armor by a percentage of your own. A nice way for DPS to have an external for tanks, or if someone's soaking a mechanic. This could be really cool. Melee attacks cause them to cause a scale to explode, dealing volcanic damage to enemies near them. So, you know, if there's a physical damage tank buster on a tank, you can pop this on them. You'll give them more armor, which means you are playing a support role. You're kind of mindful of the tank and helping them stay alive, which could be really cool for some of the squishier tanks to be able to have that extra external from a non-healer. And also, you can do damage when you time it right. So the more melee attacks they take, if you can cause the scales to explode, all of them, you'll get some volcanic damage on them, which could be really cool. So again, playing that support role. Bestow Wernstone. Conjure a pair of Wernstones, one for your target ally and one for yourself. A Wernstone can be activated by the bearer to transport them to the other Wernstone's location if they are within 100 yards. So you mark someone, and at any point they can jump to you or you can jump to them. It's a pretty optional thing here. I think this is really cool because really all we have is the Evoker long cooldown jump, which is kind of inconvenient because you have to get really close to them to use it. Or you have Life Grip, which only priests have, and not every priest really thinks about using it, whereas this is a lot more flexible. You can mark someone, they can jump to you if they need to, you can jump to them if you need to. Super cool options there. Augmentation offers a unique opportunity to delve into a playstyle never before seen in WoW. True. While we're still working on some aspects of this new paradigm, like introducing some new combat log hooks so that add-ons and community websites can effectively measure your performance, it will be needed. Even recently, we only recently got a hook for power infusion, and that helped a lot in separating out where DPS for classes was going. So there's going to be a lot more need for those sorts of things for this specialization. But that's it. That's augmentation. And on paper, it does sound like they are accomplishing that support thing. Again, there are situations where some classes benefit tremendously from power infusion, but it is a single spell with haste on it, so some benefit more from haste, some from others, and obviously they've learned over time to, you know, give PI to the priest when you have, I don't even think it should be talented, but being able to give someone PI and gain it yourself so that shadow priests don't feel like they have to hog it for themselves, they can still give it away, things like that. They've definitely had a long history of going back and forth on that idea. But this is pretty cool. Let me know what you think about augmentation. This could completely flip the meta on its head for DPS, team comps, and layouts for your teams, just because this could bring some specs that may not be as desirable right now into the forefront, and it could take some specs that don't benefit as much back down. It depends a lot on numbers and balancing, but either way, I would say it's pretty promising. But let me know what you think on this. Is this a spec you're looking forward to? Are you bummed that there's not a tank spec for Black Dragonflight for Drakthyr Evoker? And in general, you know, were you expecting a spec at all? So let me know down below. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.